All right, good morning. Today is Monday, July 22nd, 2019. Welcome to the Sweet Talk. I am your host, Kim Matina. I am a Google certified trainer and a gold product expert for the Google for Education, CS First, and Jamboard Help Forum. And today I have on my show Mr. Jake Miller.
Good
Good
morning,
morning,
Kim.
Jake. How are you?
I'm great. How you doing?
All right. Jake has his own podcast called Educational Duct Tape Podcast, and he is very successful at it. I've
Thank
This
you.
is the second time I've had Jake on my show, and Jake's been going strong with his EDU Duct Tape podcast. So you can always find him and tune in and listen to him. But why don't you give us a little introduction, Jake?
Yeah, you kind of nailed it there. So, my name is Jake. I live in Ohio. I'm a technology integration specialist. I do host the Educational Duct Tape Podcast, which is a podcast about seeing ed tech as a tool that we use to solve problems in the classroom. So we don't think about things first as today I'm going to use this tech tool. We think about things first as today I'm trying to achieve this for my students, or solve this problem for my students, or meet this learning goal for my students. And then we select a piece of technology to help us with that, just like duct tape is used as a tool. But I also, people are probably familiar with the GIFs that I make out there on Twitter. And one of my favorite things to do is just get out there on Twitter and engage with people and keep learning. Like, I'm constantly learning from other educators on Twitter, and I just love it. I'm an ed tech geek for sure.
Yeah, I hear you. I love my PLN on Twitter. I constantly learn something new from people on my show as well, in the Facebook community, the Sweet Talk Facebook community, all over the place. So that's how you learn, you grow, you get better, and you try to help others pay it forward as well. So, we're in this mission together. So today, Jake, you're going to be talking about Google SketchUp and how we can, basically give us an overview of Google SketchUp and basically give us some ideas on implementing it in the classroom, so that students can design and different structures or whatnot with it. So, Jake, why don't you share your screen and take it over?
Okay, give me 1 second here. I had some stuff accidentally shut down there, and all of a sudden I'm like, where did everything go?
Oh, no.
Right here. So yeah, SketchUp. Okay. So I started using SketchUp myself back in, gosh, it has been quite a long time since I started using it. I used to teach a STEM class to middle schoolers. It's been, let's see, it was probably in 2012 or 13 when we started the class. And so I taught that class for 3 years. And one of the things that we shared about, I guess I'm going to stop screen sharing while I'm just chatting here. That button at near that button. So one of the things that we did in that class, we wanted kids to get experience with different types of engineering, and one of the types of engineering we wanted to get them experience with was kind of like a civil engineering. And SketchUp was, and I think still for the most part is, kind of the premier free civil engineering type tool. And you understand why I call it civil engineering and not mechanical engineering when we look at it, that's out there. At that time, it was a software only. It wasn't available on Chromebooks or anything like that. And Chromebooks were just starting out, and web-based tools weren't all that common at that point anyhow. Things were more software related, and then it was software related. But a few years ago, it came out as a web-based tool and now can be used on Chromebooks. So there's actually different levels of accounts, and I'll show you SketchUp now. I'll go back to sharing my screen here, show you SketchUp, and show you kind of the accounts here. So here's what SketchUp looks like. They always have, each version of it has had one of their employees on the screen. So this is Helen. I think she must always be on her phone, apparently. And they always have one of the people there, I guess, to give you like a reference of size, right? So we assume that she's about 5'5" or something like that. So now we have a reference for how big that area of the screen is while we're working with it. But it's always one of their employees that are there. So it's been a different person in every version. But SketchUp has a lot of different versions. They still do have the web-based, I'm sorry, they sort of have software versions. They have paid software versions that are more capable. So you can see here on their plans and pricing, there's personal versions, there's professional, there's higher education, and there's primary and secondary. I'm currently using it on just a regular personal free account. So when you're looking at it, it'll be the free account. So this is the most bare bones account that they have when you see what's on my screen. But obviously also if I was doing something professionally, maybe as an architect or something like that, I might be using the SketchUp Shop version or the SketchUp Pro version, or one of the ones here listed in professional or in higher education. In primary and secondary, you can see that there is a free SketchUp for Schools version. The only requirement is that you're using a G Suite account. So as long as you're on G Suite account, you could use the SketchUp for Schools version. You have to go through some kind of district level admin, as it says right here, deployed at the district level through G Suite for Education. So you have to be going through an admin in the admin console to use it, but otherwise it's free for anybody that's on a G Suite account. And has a lot of things available for it there too. You notice over here that there's a SketchUp Pro version. That I don't know how much it costs. You see here it says it's free with a state grant. So you would want to see your state may already have that grant. And there's a Learn How button here. And I'll make sure I put these links in the Wakelet that you provide for the show, Kim, so people can come in here and see if they have it. I'm sure this version is more capable, but it is software related. So this version wouldn't work on a Chromebook. It would work on a Mac or PC. Now I'm today using the free version on a Mac through Chrome. So I'm not using software. I'm using a web-based version, which is similar to the SketchUp for Schools. Actually has a little less functionality than SketchUp for Schools does have. But you could see in here, it gives me a couple things. It gives me the ability to, they're actually in-app lesson plans if you're in the school version. You do have the ability to print in 3D from SketchUp. If your goal is 3D printing, SketchUp is not the best tool to use. You're going to want to use something like Tinkercad or one of the Autodesk tools that are out there to do that. That's just not really what SketchUp is geared for, but it is possible. And if that's the tool your kids know how to use, then it's a great tool to use. So before I talk more about that kind of stuff, we can dive back into that. Maybe I should show SketchUp now. Does that sound good?
Yeah, that sounds good.
Okay, so here I've got my screen here back with Helen ready to go. I'm going to move the screen over because I kind of zoomed off to the side there. So I'm just going to build a house for Helen to live in here. And you'll see how quickly and easily I could do it. Now, with a student working on it or with somebody actually, doing architecture or doing, some kind of design on here, this would be a more precise, drawn out experience, but you could see just how quickly and easily I can make something. So I need a rectangular base for a house. So I click over here on my rectangle tool. I don't want a circle. I don't want a polygon. I don't want text. I want a rectangle. So I'm going to click and drag out. Okay, you can see I'm starting to drag a rectangle out on the screen. And then down in the bottom right corner, do you see those dimensions down there? It's probably too tiny on your screen to actually read what it says there. But it says currently my rectangle is 5 foot 1 13/16 of an inch by 12 foot 6 3/8 of an inch. So I can actually just type in how big I want it to be. So let's say I'm building Helen a house that's 30 feet by 40 feet. So I just type in 30 with an apostrophe for feet, comma, 40 with an apostrophe for feet. And it's going to make that rectangle for as soon as I hit enter. So there is the base of Helen's house. Okay. So you could see right away that this is a great tool for in the mathematics classroom, right? Because we could type in measurement numbers there, and I could set it to be in metric. I could set it to be, even bigger sizes if I want to. So it's all a great math tool and a great design tool as well. So now I need to give, she can't live in a flat house. She needs a third dimension here. So I use the push and pull tool here, and you literally just grab on a shape and pull it up or push it down. So I could just pull up and give her a house there. And now you see down in that bottom corner again there, it says 5 feet 7 7/8 inches. So that means I've pulled it up that high, and you can see it's right by her head. So obviously this is not quite a tall enough house. She could walk into it, but she'd probably want to be a little bit taller. So let's say that she wants it to be 11 feet tall. So I type in 11, the apostrophe, and hit enter, and there's an 11-foot tall house. Okay, so very quickly and easily, I've got a 3D object there. Now, before we get into the actual turning it into a house here, we can actually just use this in the mathematics classroom. Look, if I click on this rectangular front face here and click this button over here, this is the entity info button here. It gives me some information about that face there, and you can see one thing that it gives me is the area of that face. It's 330 square feet. So right there, right away, I can now, in a math classroom, I could say to my students, create a building or create a rectangle that has an area of 330 square feet. And this one here that's 30 feet long and 11 feet tall is 330 square feet. So my students could be using it to model things like that. I haven't tested this, but I believe if I select the whole thing, not Helen, so I'm dragging my cursor around the whole thing and click entity info. Yeah, and I thought it would give me volume and surface area. I think there's a way to do volume and surface area in it. Let's see, try that again. No, it doesn't give it to me. Maybe if I combine them all, I think there's a way to do that, but I haven't explored yet how to do volume and surface area in there. But so you can see how it can be used in the mathematics classroom. Now let's say I need to give Helen a door to get into her house, right? So I want to put it right in the center of this side. So I'm gonna get my tape measure here. And actually, I don't even need my tape measure. Watch, if I hover over the side here, it's gonna show me, let's say I'm gonna make a line for the center of the door. Right there is the midpoint. You see how it just jumped to that line and gave me a blue point there. But I want it to be a couple feet off of the center. So I'm gonna say, here's the center point. I want to go away from the center. Let's say I'm going to give her a 3 foot wide door. So I want to go away 1.5 feet. That'll be that side. And I want to go away. Where's that center? I want to go this way 1.5 feet as well. So I just type it right in there. And now I can go off of those points and make myself a rectangle. So where's that point at here? Yep, there it is. I can just go up to find that other point down here.
What tool are you using there, Jake, on the toolbar?
This is the rectangle tool, and you can just faintly see that it's highlighted there in white here. So right over here on the side here. Let me zoom into it. Is that zooming in on your screen when I do that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
So you can see the rectangle tool down there. So, and obviously you would want to dive more into some learning with this before you started using it. But as you look down here, you see I've got a select tool, an eraser, the paint can tool, which also has an eyedropper option in there, which I could show you in a second. I could draw lines or squiggly lines. I could draw arcs, and there's different kinds of arcs I could draw. And then here I am in the shape tool using the rectangle here. So let's zoom back out there. So now I've got that door there. So let's say, well, that door needs like a door jamb to it, right? Actually, you know what? Let me color in the door, right? So when I click on the paint can tool, it brings me into materials. So I could just select a color, or I could go into this list of different types of materials that's here. And I want to give the door, let's see, the door would be wooden. So I go into wood and I say, I want it to be this wood right here. And I just click in there like I would with the paint can tool. And now she's got a door that looks wooden. So you could see how I could actually model what something would look like. Now it needs some woodwork around that door there. You can see how much experience I have with doing this kind of work. My dad, who's an architect, would be very frustrated with me not knowing what to call the wood that goes around the outside of a door. The trim. Yeah, we'll call it the trim. That's perfect. So I'm going to use what's called the offset tool here. The offset tool. And if I come back over to my door, get that offset tool again, I can click on that rectangle and I could actually pull it. Oops, click too fast. I could actually pull it out. And I'm going to say I want the trim to be 4 inches wide. So I just type in 4 inches and enter. There's my trim. But I don't want this part down here below it. So I use my eraser to get rid of that part down there. And you can see how quickly I could just, oops, click too many things there. Doot, doot, doot. There goes that. There goes that. Zoom in there because it doesn't want to go away for me. There we go. That trim should stick out a little bit, right? So I grab that push and pull tool we were talking about earlier. Click on that face, pull it out. I want to go out, let's say 3 inches. There's that trim there. Now I need some windows on that door, right? So let's say I grab my rectangle tool up there and I come up here and I'm just going to draw a rectangle right here. There's one. You know what? I want 2 windows side by side. So I'm just going to Control C on it. And I lost it there. Control C and paste it right over here. It doesn't want to copy and paste for me. Well, you get the point of how that window works. So now I need to be able to see through that window, right? So I can just click on that face and click delete. And now I could see in through the window and into the house there. Okay, so now we got a window. Okay, now let's give it a doorknob, right? So now I need to go up. Let's see. Let's say from the bottom right over here, I want to go up 4 feet to find, let's say 4 feet for my doorknob. Okay, so the doorknob would be right about there. So let's put a circle right there. So I go to my shape tool, get a circle. Going to come out from that center. Well, what should the radius of that doorknob be? Let's say it'll be 3 and about 2-inch radius. There we go, 2 inches. There's my doorknob. Let's get rid of that line that I drew to find the center of it. I want that part of it. There goes that part of it. And then I'm actually going to pull it out from there. Let's click on it and pull it out. Let's say I want it to stick out 3 inches. Now, would the doorknob be a cylinder like I just made it there? No, of course it wouldn't be a cylinder like that, but that's okay. I'm just modeling it and showing what we could do in there. Our house needs a peak. So let's give it a peak, and then I'll just run through basically some of the other stuff that SketchUp can do. So I'm going to grab my line tool right here. I'm going to go from the center point here. So there's the midpoint. Draw straight across. You see this green line it gives me here? It's telling me I'm going parallel to the other sides, which is exactly what I wanted to do. So it also does some, uses some mathematical language and things like that there for me too. And there is that line for my peak. And now I click on it. And these are obviously things that students would need to spend some time learning about. Click on my move tool, and then I could pull it straight up, follow that blue line. And let's say I want it to be 4 feet up in the air. Okay.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and there I've got a peak to my house. I can now add a chimney. I could do all kinds of things like that to it. And you could see just how many different things I could do in there and how quickly. So 10, 15 minutes, however long that was, I created this little house for Helen to go into, and now she could walk around in, okay? And so a lot of different things that I could do in here, and I could go and I can make small things that they don't have to be architecture or houses or things like that. I used to have my students, when I taught that STEM class, make mini golf courses in here. So they would model and design their own mini golf course, but there were parameters like a real engineer or architect would have. It had to fit within a 40-foot by 50-foot space or something like that. It had to have these kinds of building code and things like that, things for students to think about. So there's a lot of things that we could put in to really make it a project-based situation there.
And when you did that with your students, what grade level was that?
That was 8th. We used it with 7th and 8th graders. I think it could go lower than that, but not a whole lot lower than that. I'd say it's probably, I'm just going to estimate like 5th grade and up, maybe 6th grade and up. I think those ages like 5th and 6th would be pretty challenging for them at that age, but it would be above there. And I'm actually glad you brought that up because this is not one of those tools that any student of any age group could use in any class. Like the previous time that I was on your show a year or so ago, we talked about stop motion slides. And I do stop motion slides with my 7 or 8 now, her birthday was a couple weeks ago, 8 and 10-year-old kids. And I also do it with the middle schoolers I work with, and I like doing it on my own. So stop motion slides, you could do with any age group. SketchUp, however, is really only going to work really well in certain classrooms with certain age groups. And that's okay. I think like this is what educational duct tape is about to me, right? You become familiar with the tool. So now everybody watching goes like, okay, now I know what SketchUp is. And then you put it into the back of your mind. And then when the time comes that you have a lesson that it relates to or a goal that it relates to, you can go like, now I could use SketchUp. And for some teachers, that'll never happen. You'll never go like, oh, I'm going to use SketchUp for this use, this class, this goal, this unit, whatever it might be. But for other educators, you might go, oh, we're learning about Roman architecture, or we're learning about volume and surface area, or we're learning about similar figures or proportional shapes and things like that. Now I could use it. So you just store it in the back of your head until the appropriate time for it comes up. That's educational duct tape. And so not every age group, not every classroom should use SketchUp. Although I think a lot of teachers that might teach, language arts or something, I might say, I'm never going to use this in my class, but I am going to use it to redesign my bedroom or whatever.
Yeah.
You could use it on your own for
Yeah.
those types of things too. So it is a useful tool for that.
Yeah, because I kind of feel that SketchUp is more for middle school and up.
Yeah, I would say so. Yep.
Yeah, and then so for younger students, I'm thinking maybe Tinkercad might be a little bit more user friendly, only because the interface is a little bit more appealing to youngsters. But the Google SketchUp does have a tutorial. When you sign up for a new account, you can go through the tutorial, and it gives you an explanation of your toolbars and your different measurements and information on the screen. Because I did sign up for an account, and I went through the tutorial, and as I was going through the tutorial, I took screenshots.
Yep.
And I want to create some type of reference for teachers at my school with this, because I think that this has a lot of potential.
Hmm.
And also at my school, since I am one of the Google administrators, I had to download it and enable it, like you were saying before, in the admin console, and then it would be available for all the users in the domain
Right.
or within a specific organizational unit.
Yeah.
So I really think, and I like how you modeled what you just did by using mathematical terms,
Hmm.
creating your house, and saying that you wanted your doorknob to be a certain radius, and the peak of the roof and everything. So I really feel like you modeled it well, because you aligned it with like a geometry
Hmm.
mathematics
Yeah.
concepts, which was nice to see that. And also, like, as you're explaining it, I'm thinking, okay, history classes can use this as well to try to replicate or create, like, maybe a historical landmark or monument
Hmm.
for architecture as well, using the different shapes that are available in there. So I think that has a lot of potential.
Yeah. Yeah. And I agree with you wholeheartedly on those different classes, like that history and the geometry and things like that. And I also agree, like you said, about Tinkercad. Like Tinkercad definitely is much more user friendly to the young students. It's still a great tool to use in middle school and high school as well. It's all about, and this is educational duct tape again, it's all about what you're trying to achieve right there. If I was trying to build a house, I would not want to use Tinkercad for it, right? It wouldn't, it just doesn't have that level of precision. I mean, you can be precise with it, but it's difficult to be precise, I think. And it doesn't, it's not intuitive in the way of doing this. It's possible to do those things with it, and it's definitely easier for a young kid. But for me, like myself using it, like if I'm going to redesign my office, I would use SketchUp. If I'm going to design a keychain to 3D print, I'm not going to use SketchUp. I'm going to use Tinkercad. Like different tools are just better for different things. But I agree wholeheartedly. Tinkercad will work great down to first grade or so, depending on the kid's technology experience and experience with the mouse. Like you could use Tinkercad as low as kindergarten if the kid has the right instruction with it, whereas SketchUp, no way. Like you'd never be able to use
Yeah,
it at that age.
exactly. Yeah. And I do think that it would be a good option too for differentiating.
Hmm.
So, it's always good to have options for students, because some students, even though they may be in middle school, they may not be able to handle the complexity
Hmm.
of SketchUp. So then you just give them, a different option. So Tinkercad would be an alternative there. And then, like you said, with Google SketchUp, I don't think you can print 3D objects from that interface, right? Or from that
You
application.
you can export the files as STL files, which is what the files that a 3D printer works with. So you could take them out as those STL files and then prepare them for print. They're not ready to go right now because the 3D printer is going to see this as a solid object with flat sides with a very thin build to them, because I just made them as rectangles essentially. But the G Suite, the education, the for schools version has 3D print support. I don't know what
Oh,
that
okay.
means, but it allows you to export it as a 3D printed file and take it there. But I've never tried it out. But again, it really just is not a tool. Like if 3D printing is your goal, SketchUp probably is not the problem you're the program you're going to utilize. Whereas if architecture or designing spaces or things like that, or some kind of drafting or things like that are, SketchUp would be a great tool for that. Do you mind if I share a couple other things about it
Yeah,
really quickly? I
definitely.
won't walk through making the house anymore, because I think everybody gets the feeling of, if I were trying to make something in here, how easy it is to use once you get some experience with it, because you could see how quickly I whipped through doing that. And I haven't used it much over the last few years anyhow. So you could see that, just like riding a bike for me, really, in that right.
I haven't used it at all, so this is all new to me.
Right, but I've retained that level of use there, pretty quickly there. So diving back in and looking at it, just a few things I want to show. You mentioned the tutorials. Yeah, right over here, I've got what's called the instructor over here on the right, and it'll walk me through how to use different tools and things like that. And something like that pops up as soon as you start using it. So there's the instructor tool. But then there's also on their site, when you go into the G Suite for schools version, or SketchUp for schools version. There's some resources in here, like a curriculum. There's not a whole lot of lessons in here, but if you want your students to learn how to use it, there's looks like 8 different lessons in here that you could expose your students to learn how to do different things. And you could see they do have stuff about 3D printing. They have stuff like I mentioned, making a name tag. They have making a name tag right there, and it'll walk you through with a video or Google Slides or actually in a model, kind of side by side training on how to do it. So they do have tutorials for how to do those different things. And here's like a regular old introduction. So, and we'll put this link in that Wakelet you have for the show so people can get to it. So that shows you that curriculum. A few other things that they have available too that I think are really exciting are they work with AR and VR. So the way that would work is you can make your model. So you can make this table and then look at it with your phone setting in the room and see how you would like it there. So you can actually do augmented reality with SketchUp. Now, I know that works in Pro. I know it does not work in the free version. I'm actually not sure if it works in the schools version. So that would be something to look into to see if the augmented reality is available in the schools version. But yeah, you make something, say, on your computer and then view it from on your phone actually in the room you're in.
That's really cool.
Really rad. And then they also have VR available. You'd have to have one of the correct tools to be able to see it, but you could literally put on a headset and look inside of the building you had made and act like you're walking around the building in a headset to see what your building would look like, which would just be a really cool experience. And speaking of which, you could export a whole bunch of different file types. I mentioned STL earlier, but you could also export, KMZ files and things like that, which work with Google Earth and stuff like that. So you could put these files into a whole lot of different situations and use them in a lot of different ways, if they're useful in relation to what you're trying to achieve in the classroom.
So when you say you can, import them into a Google Earth, the KMZ file, what does that exactly mean?
Well, the way it used to be actually back in the history of SketchUp. So SketchUp was made, I think around 2000 or something by a company named Trimble. And at some point in time, they were bought out by Google because Google saw it as a way to start modeling buildings in Google Earth. So this is back in like 2006 or something like that. And people were actually making real buildings that really existed in SketchUp and then putting them into Google Earth so you could actually see those 3D buildings. Well, now that's kind of just inherent in Google Earth. They don't need that anymore. And I think that's why Google no longer owns SketchUp. It was a temporary ownership there. Because now they don't need that. But I believe since you could export into KMZ files, here it is right here, that you could then put that into Google Earth and look at how that would look like, add that as a layer, like so model your school or something, add it as a layer into Google Earth. I've never tried it, but it is something that I believe that with somebody who has experience with it, you could learn how to do. So this page I'm on here is the Getting Started with SketchUp for Schools page. So I'll also put that into the Wakelet for the show. But you can get in here and see the difference between the free version that I was using, the schools version that's available, and the desktop version if you have that K-12 grant available. And then it actually just walks you through how to set it up as an administrator, what things you need, getting used to the interface. So they really walk you through the whole process in here of how to do it. And that's that's kind of SketchUp in a nutshell. One other tool I want to kind of give a shout out to, we were mentioning that maybe you would use Tinkercad if you're trying to build something like a keychain, for example, or if you're working with younger students. Well, if you're working with older students and your focus really is on mechanical engineering, not this kind of civil engineering architecture that I was showing, maybe instead of SketchUp, you might actually want to consider the tool Onshape, which I've got on screen here. Onshape definitely is not elementary appropriate, but for middle school or high school, especially high school, it's a great web-based tool that you could actually use to build parts and build things like that. Whereas SketchUp can do it, this is a tool that's really geared to it. So if I was going to design my house, I would not use Onshape. If I was going to design a car part, like you see them using here, Onshape might be the one to go with. I've never used Onshape, but a good friend of mine, Dave Turnett, who used to teach the STEM program with me, he still continues to teach STEM, and he uses Onshape with his students 7th and 8th grade, and they work with it. So that's just kind of another different tool out there, but it's always about what am I trying to achieve? And then you pick the tool that does it, right? You get experience. So now anybody watching and viewing kind of has a general idea of what Tinkercad does, has a general idea of what SketchUp does, and has a general idea of what Onshape does. And then when they come to that situation in their classroom where they have a learning goal for their students, then they can go, all right, which tool do I use for this, right? Oh yeah, I remember Jake talking about Onshape. I should go learn more about that, right? You don't even need to be an expert in it. You learn about it in detail when the time's appropriate for it.
Right, right. Yeah, I agree. No, I'm glad that you went over all that, because it gives everyone, options for different
Hmm.
grade levels, and you actually explained the purpose for each one. So for me, not knowing anything about these tools, because I never used these tools before, it was a great introduction. Now, if I want to use them, I can take it to the next step and collaborate with the classroom teacher, or even use it in my class to figure out, an application to I have to align with, like with a math teacher or a science teacher with this. But I really appreciate you going over all this, because I just think that this is like another hidden gem that
Oh,
people
totally.
don't know about. And I think that getting the word out there will at least make people aware and hopefully look into it. My phone's ringing. I just shut it off. um, but yeah, I think it's another hidden gem. So I think that it has a lot of potential. If you have the need for something like this, you can definitely look into it, and I think it won't disappoint. Of course, it'll be a learning curve for the teacher as well as the students, but you fail forward. You just learn as you go, and you just move one step forward into the right direction, and that's all you
Yeah.
can do.
Yeah,
And
totally.
let everyone in your classroom be a teacher and learn together with this, because we're not, especially me, like I'm not proficient in any of this design engineering application. So for me, it's really learning right from the beginning. The only experience I have with any type of building is with CoSpaces.
Yep.
So CoSpaces is another application that you can use to design and build environments or rooms, buildings, structures, but not to the extent with civil or architectural engineering. But it gives you the AR VR concept as well. So that's the only experience I have. I don't have any AutoCAD experience or Autodesk experience. So for me, this was very helpful, because as you're explaining it, I'm thinking about all the different ways that I can possibly use it with the other teachers in the school. So it's good to keep your options open and have an open mind. And like you said, when you find the need, then you have a tool that you can use, and then just move forward with it and
Yeah.
see how it works.
Yeah, I
The
totally agree.
worst case that can happen is that you have to do it again or revise something. It's you model in different concepts to your students, and that would be one that you would explore. Model as much as you can, and if something doesn't work, or if you don't know something, the students are seeing you go through that process as well. So it's not a failing opportunity, it's a fail forward opportunity.
No, totally. I totally agree. Yeah.
So anything else you'd like to add there, Jake?
Actually, while you were talking about the learning together with the students, I thought, like, what a good time to share, some student work. So I want to show really quickly. These are some old screenshots from back when I taught it with middle schoolers. So these were some projects that I still have saved on my computer. So what the kids would do is they would screenshot different views of their mini golf course they made and put them in a slideshow to show us all what their putt-putt course looked like, or mini golf course. So you can see this was made by an 8th grader. This was a good one, but I wouldn't even say it was one of the real true exemplars. There were some really impressive ones. This is just one that I grabbed really quickly. And so you could see what the 8th graders were able to do in here. Here's another one of what
So
they went through and
they
made.
took a screenshot of their design, and then you had them give a brief description of it. Is that what?
Yeah. Yeah. And so in this project, they had to make a 3-hole mini golf course. So they would go through and they would have to show us what the whole course looked like, what the supply building looked like, what the different holes of the course looked like. So this was these kids giving us a walkthrough of their project. You also could do it with screencasting would be a great way to do it. And if you're using the G Suite, the for schools version, it actually saves into your drive. So the students actually could be submitting the actual real files into Google Classroom. I've never tried it, but I don't see why that wouldn't work. So, but this is what I had them do, was put them into slides like this. And you could see, what these kids were able to do, in just a couple weeks time. And it was always like, when we were doing this in class, it was like that state of flow, right? The kids would just be in it, designing their places in there. I kind of wish I would given them more choice in what they made. Like maybe you can make a shopping center or a mini golf course or a new house for yourself or whatever you want, and giving them some freedom in there. But you could just see what they were able to do at that age level
How long
with
did
the
it
tool.
take for the students to complete that project?
I think the whole unit we did on it was between 2 and 3 weeks. I'm not sure how long exactly. And they went through a tutorial of just learning how to use it that took them maybe 3 days or something. And then the next 2 weeks or so time was just making their course. So 2 weeks of like 50-minute long periods of
Every
going through
day?
and mapping it out. Yeah, every day. And
Every
they were able
day.
to do that much work on it. Yep. And some kids
Okay.
were faster, some kids were slower, but it was one of those things where they just got into it and went with it. They really enjoyed creating in there.
And did you find that they were engaged and immersed into the lesson or into the activity?
Oh, kids who afterwards do something like that, right? They were into something of their.
Oh, we got a bad connection. Let's see. Can you hear me, Jake? I think we lost Jake. Let's see. Where are you, Jake? Well, we are having some issues here with our connection. So just be patient. Let's see if we can get him back. All right. Well, to recap, I did ask Jake how long it took to complete that mini golf course assignment. And he basically said he gave the students a chance to go through and learn the application at first, which took about 3 days. And like I mentioned, there is a tutorial available when you sign up for an account. And then after the students completed the tutorial and became familiar with it, he said it took about maybe 3 weeks to complete the assignment every day for about 50 minutes. And my question was to him, were the students immersed? Were they engaged in the assignment or the activity? And I think he was saying that they were, but the connection we got lost there. So we're going to try to get him back. Let's see here if I can just get him back and then he can recap. If not, then we will just close out the show. Let's just see if we can get him back. But yeah, I really think that Google SketchUp can be very helpful and can be used in math class, language arts, maybe if they're aligning a concept with maybe a novel that they're reading. Even in history class, if you wanted the students to recreate some type of architecture in history or historical, monument. Even in art class as well, students can design and create something within Google SketchUp or to align with something that maybe they're going to create via clay or wood or something along that line. So, and definitely in STEM class, as Jake mentioned as well. So SketchUp has a lot of potential, a lot of opportunities, and I would recommend checking it out and at least keeping it in your back pocket for future reference. Well, we are going. Oh, I think we got Jake back. Hey, Jake.
All right. One of my personal hotspot. This is life with technology, right? Just all of a sudden, I'm hearing you saying, "I think we lost Jake," and I'm like, Kim, I'm here.
It's
I can't.
okay.
You can't
I
hear
was
me.
kind of recapping what you were saying and about the length of the assignment and how long it took for the students to finish it, and what you did to get them acquainted with it, and basically going over a few ideas on how we can use SketchUp in the math, language arts, history, and art classroom. And actually went over, even in science, like I would think that, there's some type of science, it would align with science somehow or another,
Yeah.
depending on what your curriculum is. So really, I think that what you need to do is basically look at what you're trying to accomplish in your class. It doesn't matter what subject area, and then see how this tool can align with your learning goal, and then create a model for it first, create an example so that students can see what the end result will look like.
Hmm.
And then I bet you once you show them that, they'll be hooked,
Right.
and they will make something better than what you did.
Oh yeah. Yep.
And then they'll end up becoming teachers, of their own little groups, if you have it set up that way in your classroom.
Yeah, definitely.
So we're going to wrap up the show today. What I'm going to do is share my screen really quick here. Hopefully I don't lose connection. All right. So can you see my screen?
I sure can.
All right. So this is Jake's website. You can read more about Jake and sign up for his educational duct tape podcast at jakemiller.net, and check him out there. He's got a lot of great, information. Jake creates a lot of EDU GIFs, and he's got a lot of great resources that I would highly recommend. You can also visit my website at thesweettalk.com. That's the SUITE talk.com. And you can find the latest episode on the homepage. You can also inquire to be a guest on my show by filling out the guest form, and I will get back to you as soon as I can. You can also join the Facebook community, and you can check out the schedule of who's going to be on the show. And when, if you would like to be on, you can also, you know, check the schedule out to see when the availability is for that. And you can also please subscribe to my YouTube channel. My podcast is also available on Podbean, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Play, and Google Podcasts. So that concludes the show for today. And what I'm going to do is go back to Jake. There we are. And that concludes the show for today, Jake.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me on. It's always a blast. I love watching your show and listening to your show as a podcast can, because I can really like deep dive in like one specific tool, every episode, and I really love that about it. So thanks for having me on. It's an honor to be a part of it.
Oh no, I was honored to have you on as well. This was your second appearance, and I appreciate you being on. I know we're in summer mode, but we're always trying to learn and help others as well. So just stay in the mission and keep paying it forward, my friend.
Yep, same to you.
Thanks, Jake. I'll talk to you soon. Have a great day.
You too.
Bye.
Bye.